Razer currently has 4 different webcams. Starting from the most budget to the most expensive, there is the Razer Kiyo X, Kiyo, Kiyo Pro, and Kiyo Pro Ultra, which also happens to be the best webcam on the market, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now, all 4 of these webcams are compatible with Razer Synapse, and with the Kiyo Pro and Kiyo Pro Ultra specifically, you get some exclusive settings that you can only control here, but you can control all the basic settings of these webcams in OBS. Also, if you're wondering why I have not updated the firmware on my Kiyo Pro or Kiyo Pro Ultra, it's because Razer Synapse is kind of notorious for having firmware updates that brick webcams. So starting off, this is the Razer Kiyo X. It records up to 1080p, 30 frames per second. It can also do 720p 60 if you want it, but all of these webcams can. I wouldn't bother. Anyway, it's MJPEG format, 82 degrees field of view. It's one of the best webcams under $50. Now, of course, the price is going to depend on when you get it and where you get it. So I've tagged each webcam, and also I have links to all of them in the description so that you can see their current pricing. Now, the colors of this webcam are decent. They're even better than the original Kiyo, but the grain, it's pretty high, especially in lower lighting, because I do have some pretty good studio lighting on, but this really needs a ton of light. And that kind of makes sense because the sensor size of this is only 1/3 of an inch. And you are going to need a decent amount of light for the autofocus to be effective, but even so, it's really not that amazing on the Kiyo X. The later devices from Razer have really been set so that they focus on your face, but they can't really focus all that well on anything else. So do keep that in mind. If you need the autofocus to work, all of these do have their own little quirk, and I'll be talking about that. The build is basic, non-detachable 60-inch cable, USB-A. It's all plastic. It tilts vertically, but there's no rotation. The 1/4-inch tripod threading is on the bottom of the monitor mount, just like the rest of these webcams. And here is the microphone on the Kiyo X. Now, while this webcam is very strong at its price point, I've seen the original Kiyo drop down significantly in price. So now that might actually be worth considering over the Kiyo X. So let's go ahead and get into that. The original Razer Kiyo is also a 1080p 30 frames per second webcam, same field of view, 82 degrees. Now the trick that this webcam has is it has a ring light built right onto it, and you twist it to make it brighter or dimmer. Now in this lighting, where it's pretty decent lighting, got an Elgato key light and a key light air, you're probably not going to really be able to tell the difference. If I turn this on, yeah, I am a little bit brighter, but if I turn it off, can't really notice it too much. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my studio lights entirely. And this is when you're really going to be able to notice the effectiveness of this. Now I've adjusted the webcam settings to compensate for the lack of light. And yeah, it actually does help, because if I go ahead and turn this completely off, yeah, you can barely see me at all. So the light does make a little bit of a difference, but if you're in a lighting scenario where you have such little light, then I would invest in getting some sort of light. Other than that, the build of the Kiyo is similar to the Kiyo X. Same length, non-detachable cable, USB-A, all plastic. It tilts up and down, no rotation. As far as the image quality, it is significantly sharper than the Kiyo X, but the colors aren't quite as good. When you look at the background, you can't really tell because you don't have a real reference point, but since I actually live here, I can see the white balance is a little bit off. No matter how you adjust it, it's either going to be a little bit too greenish or a little bit too yellow. So using automatic white balance might be the way to go. The autofocus on the original Kiyo, it's not too bad. The main issue is it really struggles when there's a lot of intense light. So if you have something up close to the camera and then there's going to be light reflecting off of it, it kind of has issues with that. Now here's the microphone on the Kiyo. It does really struggle with fan noise more than any of the other microphones, but of course I wouldn't use any of these microphones unless it's like an emergency. If you can find this device for under $50, then I would definitely recommend it. Now this is where things start to get really good. The Razer Kiyo Pro can record up to 1080p 60 frames per second uncompressed YUI2. So the motion is way more fluid on this device, and the colors are significantly better because of that YUI2. And I can even adjust it and change the contrast and stuff like this to make it look exactly how I want, but I'm fine with it where it is right now. The field of view can be adjusted from 103 degrees, 90 degrees, and 80 degrees. You're gonna have to do that in Razer Synapse. I have it set to medium right now. I think that looks the most natural. If you got it to wide, then it's gonna have a very extreme fisheye effect that you might not be able to see it in this small preview window, but at full screen, it becomes a lot more apparent when you see the edge of the screen like really warping, and it looks weird. Just like the Kiyo Pro Ultra, this can be screwed off of its monitor mount if needed. However, this led to me eventually losing the Kiyo Pro Ultra's monitor mount entirely, so maybe just keep it on. This device comes with a privacy cover that you can just put over the webcam itself, also easy to lose. The wire is detachable, 60 inches, braided USB-C on one end and A on the other. Now while the Kiyo Pro does sacrifice some sharpness in comparison to the original Kiyo, the colors are a whole lot better, and of course the 60 FPS is a massive deal. The sensor is also a little bit bigger. It's 1/2.8 inches instead of 1/3 of an inch. It has HDR, which you can control in Synapse, but unless you have an open window to your back, like a very specific lighting scenario, I personally don't find that it's worth losing half your frames over having that effect. Now, the autofocus of the Kiyo Pro isn't actually terrible in the sense that it can't track stuff. The issue is that it pulses a lot. So it'll find something like my face and then kind of pulse in and out. When you are recording over a long period of time, you just saw that right there, it tends to do that a lot. It's really not sure where it really wants to prioritize. It's one to prioritize your face, and then if something moves, it's gonna pulse on that. Now switching over to the microphone of the Kiyo Pro, I bought this webcam at its launch price for $200 when it came out, but I've seen this drop way down. So if you can find this for under $100, which is where I've seen it as low as 80 bucks, then I feel like this is currently the best webcam under $100 right now. Now we have the heavy hitter. The Kiyo Pro Ultra is a dramatic leap beyond all the other three Razer webcams, but not just those, it's way better than every other webcam that exists on the market. Now this can do 4K 30 frames per second MJPEG or 4K 24 frames per second uncompressed YUI2, additionally 1080p 60 frames per second uncompressed YUI2. Now this is a 73-degree field of view by default. It also has HDR, just like the Kiyo Pro, and some other unique settings that you can change in Razer Synapse. For example, there's one that can reduce the fisheye effect. I actually do have that on right now because there's a little bit of a bend if you don't put that on. The main thing that sets this webcam apart from the others is the optics. There are a lot of 4K webcams out. There's even one that does 60 frames per second. It's the Elgato Facecam Pro. But the reason that the Kiyo Pro Ultra looks better than all of those other webcams is because of the parts inside of it. This has a sensor of 1/1.2 inches, so the largest sensor of any webcam on the market by far right now. Very close to the 1-inch sensor on the Sony ZV-1. This combined with the amazing f1/1.7 lens lets in a ton of light, gives that kind of cinematic look, and produces that bokeh effect or that blurry background. Whereas you switch to something like the Razer Kiyo and you can still see all the stuff in the background with the same level of sharpness as me. Now the autofocus on this Kiyo Pro Ultra pulses a lot less than the Kiyo Pro, but it's also very hard to get to focus on anything that's not your face. There, I did it right there. There are two different autofocus modes that you can control in Razer Synapse, but honestly, this thing really is dialed in to have AI face tracking because they don't want the same issue that the Kiyo Pro had. The build is almost identical to the Kiyo Pro, just bigger. It's got that same privacy cover that you can put on it, but it has a secondary one, a privacy shutter that's under the lens that you can twist open or close. Mine came with a USB-C to A cable, braided, detachable, 60 inches, just like the Kiyo Pro. However, I heard that the newer ones come with a longer cable. Now let me switch over to the mic of the Kiyo Pro Ultra. The Kiyo Pro Ultra is an end game webcam. If you want something that's still going to look great in 5 years, this is the device to get. This is all four webcams side by side. Now the quality mostly mirrors the price. So I will say the best value option is probably going to be the original Kiyo, simply because under $50, which I've seen it for lately, the sharpness just looks so much better than the Kiyo X. So I say under $50 I go with the Kiyo, under $100 go with the Kiyo Pro, and if you want the best of the best, Kiyo Pro Ultra.